Has he shot anybody?
He fired a shot. I don't know if he shot or not. And he just choked me. And I'm afraid for my son and my baby. Please hurry, please.
Oh my God! Where are you at?
Victims of domestic violence, they're like a prisoner of war.
Officers have to understand that either you're our knight in shining armor or you're our worst nightmare.
The police are on their way, okay?
The question is, when do we change the culture and all stand up and say that violence against women is something we're not going to tolerate in policing?
What's the problem? This is the police department. What's the problem?
The very moment the radio dispatch comes in and the dispatcher says, domestic violence call, something happens to you as an officer.
Who has a gun to your head?
You start to think about your own survival.
Every scene is different.
I'll be making a quick stop at Clay Ave.
For the police officer who is approaching that front door, it's the unknown.
The offender comes in all kinds of flavors, from walking out to sticking their hand out and shaking hands with you like they're a real estate agent when you pull on the scene, to someone who's standing on the front porch waiting for you to get there so they can tell you you can't come in my house, threatening you with a lawsuit and saying they're going to have your badge, or somebody that's going to meet you with a gun or a knife.
You mind if I just pat down your pockets real quick? You don't have anything in here? No. Okay. Nothing in here? No, this is my smoke. Okay.
We have buried U.S. police officers in this country for over 300 years, killed answering calls, where there's a violent man there often abusing their family. This should be the very best thing we do, because all the things that an offender will do to their family is what they'll do to a responding police officer.
It's a female party that's on the line, and I can hear the men in the background.
It's very important to have as much information as possible before rolling up to the scene of that domestic violence. Information like, have we been here before? Have there been arrests here before? If there's been arrests, who are the occupants? Are the occupants wanted? Is there any warrants for those individuals? Is there any mental health information that our officers need to know?
It's amazing officers don't get hurt more often than they do. You know, people are emotional, the police are in their house. Almost always there's substance abuse issues there, some type of intoxication, or somebody's drunk, high. You know, really teamwork is probably the biggest key to safety when we're responding to these kind of calls. The more people we have, the safer we're going to be.
That's a struggle that you have in small communities. You may not have backup for anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. You run into issues of radio contact.
Talking from a landline.
You get out of cell phone contact. Somewhere it's dead end. Yeah, I'm not going to try this. If I go in with an attitude and I go in being abrasive and rash and pushy when I first get there, well, then that's probably not going to turn out real well for me when the next officer's not coming for 15 minutes.
It's not unusual to see about a third of your calls are repeat calls. And if you get a lot of repeat calls, that often means someone's using more violence in a shorter period of time.
I need backup to expedite. I've got a female being dragged. My car just got hit.
One more time.
Post Falls 1138. We're northbound on William. A female is being dragged.
I have actually talked to officers who told me, I got familiar. I knew the guy. I'd been there 3 or 4 times. I decided to pull in the driveway. I thought, I won't hit the end of the street. I'll wave my back off. I don't need them. I think I know him. And I ended up having to shoot this man. I've had officers tell me that on domestic violence calls. Because you think you know someone, and again, what you don't know is the dynamic of that family at that moment when that victim called the police.
Hey, what's your dad doing? He's killing my mom. With what, honey? With what? A gun.
When you talk about victim safety, you've got to talk about your own safety as well. You can't separate the two. Which means you've got to ask the victim questions you might not have asked in the past, like, has he ever threatened you or your children with a gun? Do you think he might try to kill you? Has he ever assaulted you while you were pregnant? Has he ever strangled you? Has he ever forced you to do something of a sexual nature against your will you didn't want to do? I mean, these are questions that may not have relevance to the very moment that you were there about the assault, but the context is critical.
We should always assume that there might be some type of weapon. Add alcohol and drugs, and then you have a volatile mix.
They're following me! Oh my gosh! Where are you at?
If this individual seems to be dangerous, we need to get those guns out of their hands.
If you don't pick up on some of those things, and you don't make an arrest, or you don't at least provide services for that victim, the next time your fellow officer goes back, the call may be much more serious. Your fellow officer may be under greater threat of either violence or homicide.
All right, here we go. That situation is still ongoing. Has a DVPO come down?
That's the one we discussed last night about where she's staying at. So when y'all serve him, that's got child custody in it as well.
If you're offering any kind of service, a protection to a victim of domestic violence, you're now a problem for the offender.
Be safe. Just need to pay attention to what goes on in your surroundings and tactically aware.
If we just assume that these men kill out of a sense of power and control over women, we miss the complexity, because often they kill when their power is ebbing, and often they kill when they feel they're not in control.
Usually these folks are really emotional. A lot of times this is the first notice that things are serious. So they'll do what they can do to try to avoid service.
Sorry, my mileage was 675, and I have other units here with me serving.
And this is what times leads to officer injuries, officer deaths, because when they start losing control, we start gaining control. And we have to gain control in policing because we're responsible for your safety.
Folks who violate protection orders are some of the scariest people that I think that I have to deal with.
All rise, please.
If he's out to get you, he's out to get you, and he doesn't care about that order of protection. That's just a piece of paper to him, until you're cut up or beat up, and then somebody shows up to help you.
The threat before this threat is what's worrying me, though.
What was that threat?
That if I ever was to get another protection order against him, that he was going to make it worth it.
If you've got protection order violation, if you've got a bail condition violation, if you've got someone who's thumbing their nose at a sanction that a court's levied on them because of domestic violence, that's a high indicator before you even arrive on the scene.
He told me that he would kill me and hide the body and act surprised when the police came. He had told me before that the police were nobody special, and he didn't have any problem standing up to them.
Domestic violence offenders coerce and threaten, intimidate victims. Why do we think that offender wouldn't use those same tactics on a responding officer? Let me isolate the officer. Let me intimidate the officer. Let me coerce the officer. Let me threaten the officer. Let me assault the officer. Let me use my kids against the officer. Let me use my wife against the officer. Please don't take him to jail. Don't do this. We'll lose our paycheck. Let me use everything that I use to keep my family under control, to controlling that officer's response as well. If it works on one, try it on another.
Is someone there trying to call for the police or an ambulance?
No, that was an accident.
No, it wasn't an accident. Get up here.
It was, sir.
Was it an accident?
Sir.
So what exactly is the problem there?
I have no idea.
Get over here.
The bottom line is you've got to take each and every domestic violence call serious. You can't lower your guard. You can't minimize. If you minimize, you'll get hurt or the victim will get hurt. And this is something that no officer wants.
I'll be making a quick stop at Clay F.